talk about allyship, particularly in light of how much ableism exists in this world. Everything from actions down to language, like you had talked about, Crystal, earlier. So I would like to hear your thoughts, both of you, on allies and sort of the notion of allyship. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I mean, basically, my whole thing about allyship, whether it's about disability or race or gender identity or anything like that, is that the best thing for you that allies can do, I think, is just to signal boost and amplify the voices of people who have less privilege, right? So if you are a non-disabled person and you are interested in being, learning how to be a good ally, you gotta listen to disabled people. You gotta listen to them. You gotta amplify the things that they're talking about, the issues that they're concerned about. And that's really like the number one thing I think that you can and should do as an ally. Like that's where it all starts, because, how are you going to know what disabled people care about, what they feel like are issues that are not being addressed? Like, how are you going to do that without listening to them and reading what they're writing and seeing what they're talking about? That's like the only way you're going to do it. And I think that's a really good place to start. I mean, like, disability is such a broad spectrum. There's so many kinds of disabilities and so many people within those disability groups that have varying opinions that, like, it's really just the number one thing you could do is just listen and signal boost. And, I think really just start from there.
Mm-hmm. I think that for me, I really like how Crystal focused on the individual level. But for me, I would add to that what organizations can do. And so one thing that I've noticed within both disability organizations and Black organizations is the lack of focus about all areas of disability. Within disabled organizations, the lack and resistance of talking about race, talking about anything other than disability, but particularly race and gender issues. So I really would like to see disability organizations really step it up in that focus of getting more diverse voices and faces within their advocacy work, within their strategic optimization when it comes to getting disabled experience to the masses and improve our lives. When it comes to Black organizations, it really dumbfounds me that Village is not a prominent initiative within their focus. And if it is, it takes on a more medical model standpoint. And I really wish that Black organizations would realize that disability is just as important as poverty, just as important as educational inequality, just as important as discrimination when it comes to employment. It is just that important, because you could become disabled at any time in your life, not just at birth. So I really wish that Black organizations would step up their allyship to support disabled Black people like me and Crystal, who are speaking out, who are doing advocacy work, and to really bring a better understanding about disability to our community. Because Black people, we know somebody who has a disability. Mm-hmm. And, either we know them or we know of them. Mm-hmm. And, we're not sitting at home. We're not in the back room anymore. We're out here. And so for Black organizations, particularly, to not have disability within their prime focus is doing a great disservice to us. And for me, organizations have to really step up their allyship when it comes to supporting disabled people in general and Black disabled people particularly.
Yeah, and I think it just going back to social media and stuff like that, it's really important, if you want to be a good ally and that's where you're going to start, on Twitter or Tumblr or whatever, it's really nice to signal boost for people who maybe don't have that kind of reach that you have. I don't want to be critical of any one person or any one kind of movement or anything, but it's really disheartening when you see people talking about intersectionality in general, and they're race, class, gender, and gender identity, and then disability is always left out. I was telling Melissa that I wanted to I was joking with a friend about creating a Twitter bot that would scrape all of those tweets and retweet them and add and disability, because they're always it's always left out. It's always one of the last things that people think of as a identity that you can genuinely have and take seriously and be proud of, and also an identity that comes along with a lot of other political sort of issues and problems. So yeah, it's just really the main thing you can do, just like signal boost and listen to people who are in that community and try to go from there. Like don't one of the things I really hate in allyship is if like an ally or some group or whatever does something and you speak out as a disabled person who was maybe offended by it or you think it's wrong. Like one of the things you should not do is tell me that I'm misunderstood or that I'm taking it the wrong way. Like, don't,
Yeah.
one of the most frustrating things is to be told that, like, no, you just don't get it. Like, I get it. Like, if you offended me, then I get it, and so that's one of the other things that's like really important to remember. Like, don't try to speak over me or, devalue like my response to something if I think it was ableist or offensive in some way. Like, it's just not good, so don't try it.
That is definitely not good allyship. And going back to what Crystal said about intersectionality, if your focus does not include disability, then it is not intersectional. If your feminism or womanism does not include disabled women, it is not intersectional. So just understand that if disability is not somewhere within your work, and it's not just mentioning disability, but including us fully, and not being tokens to project your own work or whatever your organization is trying to do, that is not inclusive and it's not intersectional. And I really wish that people would understand that.
And I should add too, going on with that, not to get like super political, but one of the things I always notice is okay, well, I'm going. So, one of the things I always notice though about disability is that like when people do include us, people who are doing intersectional work, one of the like two of the only times we ever get disability ever really is discussed is when people talk about right to die or when people talk about abortion. And if you're a disabled person and you consider yourself progressive or, liberal or whatever, and you never see your identity mentioned, by other progressives, other liberal people, except for when they're talking about like how you should probably die or whatever, like it does not make you feel good, So I really think people need to consider the ways in which they do include disability, like Melissa was saying, if you're a political organization or whatever, and you do talk about disability, but it's like always an add-on, or you only talk about it in terms of like people should have access to abortion, or they should, right to die should be whatever, should be legal all the time. And I should say right now, like I think abortion is something that people should have, free, legal access, easy access to. I think everybody should, like, I'm very, very in favor of that, but like, it really is kind of, upsetting. Like when you only hear disability talked about in those kinds of terms politically, it's not great. But yeah, so I'm gonna get off that now because I don't want to.
No, but that's a very, I think, important point because that's not something that you hear often, right?
And we realize that disabled people, when it comes to politics, we experience disparities in almost every aspect, from poverty, healthcare, education, employment, access to transportation, access to resources. All those issues fit within disability advocacy. So if you're talking about those issues, then you need to be including disability in some way, shape, or form, and it not be an add-on. It should be an integral part in your discussions within your work as everything else.
Yep. Those things oftentimes are talked about around community, right? And it's like people with disabilities live in your community.
Right.
We're here.
Everywhere. Not paying attention to us. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So
and you don't want to pay attention to us.
So it shouldn't be an afterthought. People with disabilities live in your communities. They have the right to live in your communities just as you do. And so they should be included. Yeah. It's just simple as that.